Hello, I am Laura Hart, and I'm here on my weekly Heart to Heart with my colleague and friend, Dr. Ashley Lewis Presser. Ashley, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. It's a beautiful sunny day here, and I'm just happy to. I really love doing my weeklies, and I love, partially it's out of my own curiosity. I get to learn a lot about people who are doing really cool work. So, for those of you who are joining us who don't know RoboFun, we run creative classes for children in STEAM. So that's in robotics, in coding, in animation, and video game making, and Minecraft. And we are at robofun.org. And we have lots of classes coming up, especially right now. Lunar New Year is one of our days where kids come. If you're a mom or a dad and looking for a place for your child, go to robofun.org or call us. I put out a blog twice a week, and if you give us your name on the website, that's all it's used for. And there's tips and tricks to schooling, parenting, and updates about our classes, free classes that we run or trial classes. So we'd love to have you as a part of the RoboFun community. And every week I run one of these cool talks. So today I'm here with Ashley. Ashley and I have worked together, I believe, at least 10 years, maybe even 15 years. Ashley works for a company called the Educational Development Corporation as both a researcher and a grant evaluator. And about, I believe, even maybe 15 years ago, we received a National Science Foundation grant. And Ashley was our evaluator that we did what we were supposed to do in the grant, which is what evaluators in educational grants do. And Ashley, maybe you can say a more complete picture about what your current work is, and then we'll move back to your past.
Sure. So just to build on what you were saying about the evaluation and the research, the line between those two can be not so clear sometimes, but the way I like to think about it is with evaluation, you're seeing if the program is working the way it's intended to work. And in research, you're asking particular questions and seeing how to answer those questions through, say, implementation of a curriculum or trying a different strategy in the classroom.
So you're currently involved in a really cool study of preschool kids, correct?
Yes. So most of my work is focused on STEM interventions, developing them or evaluating them, particularly as they include technology and focus on STEM. One thing that, I think we're always trying to get at is really innovative ways to use technology, not just for technology's sake, but for making sure that it's useful and really bringing fun and enjoyment to the classroom.
Yep.
Yeah.
So before we go into this cool tool that you've developed, tell us, how did you get here? I know you have two children. I believe you have two children. How did you come into this career?
That's a really great question. So in my undergrad work, I focused on psychology, and I was really interested in educational psychology and industrial psychology. I was not interested in clinical psychology, which most of my friends were. And I ended up picking educational psychology for graduate school because I felt like it was more ubiquitous. It was something that could really impact the world as we learn about and investigate what works in the classroom. I just felt like it would be a greater impact in my future world.
And your goal was to improve education, basically.
Right.
Yeah. And so this seemed like a good tool to do that.
Yeah. So then I went to graduate school and got my degree in educational psychology. And then I went to work at EDC, and I've been there ever since.
The rare story of someone who's in the same job maybe 20 years later. So
exactly.
So did I get that right? Educational Development Corporation?
It's the Education Development Center.
Okay, Center, not corporation. Right. And your company runs evaluations and is researching things all over the world, or?
Yes, I'm in the domestic division, but there's an international division as well. And then we focus on education and health primarily. And there's the research component, the evaluation component, and there's also some technical support aspects to our work.
Meaning technical support of people who have grants and need help, or
either or directly with teachers or healthcare providers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So in the current program you're running, tell us about it. Or that. So basically EDC runs on writing big grants, getting funded for them, and then trying to show things to how we can educate our children better or how we can manage healthcare better, that type of thing. Is that right?
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So I wrote this grant a number of years with several of my colleagues, and the goal of the grant is to create an intervention for preschools that there's an app component, there's a teacher guide, mm-hmm. and the teachers would then engage in a series of investigations with the preschoolers in a way that uses hands-on materials, books, physical movement, in addition to being able to use this app to scaffold the investigation process as they ask questions, they collect data, they look at that data and really talk about it. So that was the goal, is to create this app and this intervention that could be really fun and engaging at the preschool level. And the reason that, or the motivation behind why I did this, I was in a school observing for a science grant, for a different grant, where I just watched this wonderful science activity the teacher did. And I just happened
for a minute. So
sure.
Say, a lot of times the work that you do is you watch and you try to come up with what's working in this classroom, mm-hmm. what's not working, and what could be some interventions or some ways both to evaluate it and to improve things in the future. Is that a good?
Yeah. And as we go into the classroom, we're always trying to be, kind of a fly on the wall to see what's happening,
sure.
and not interrupt what's happening. Right. But also assume that you're going to learn something from the teacher. I mean, the teachers are a great source of strength and ideas. Yep. And every time I go into the classroom, I learn something interesting, or it sparks an idea. And so I view teachers as collaborators in that aspect of it. And in this particular grant, and many of them, we do this as well, we go through a process of co-design, meaning we show teachers something that we are trying to do, and we get their feedback early on and then throughout the entire process, so that when we make changes, it's based on something that we think teachers actually want, right? And that it would be useful to them.
Right. In other words, you don't want to create this thing totally separately and then have no one use it.
Exactly. Right? Yep. Yeah. We want it to be useful. We want it to be responsive to what teachers need and want. Yeah.
So you told me this story of watching a lesson that was amazing, and do you want to keep going with that?
Oh, yeah. So I just watched this wonderful science activity, and I just happened to be continuing to sit there in the classroom, and the teacher brought out this beautiful graph that she had created. And I was so excited. I was like, oh, this is great. I'm going to see this great discussion, just like we saw with the science. And what ended up happening is the teacher basically showed them this beautiful graph and told them what it meant. And it took about 2 minutes and it was over. And I was sort of like, wow, this is a really fabulous teacher. And I think we need to provide some way for teachers to engage in this data talk with, which is what we call these discussions about the data, in a way that's like really helpful and scaffolds the process for the teacher, but also is fun and engaging. And there's this book that I read, and it suggests that you spend about a third of the time collecting the data and making the graph, and 2/3 of the time talking about it. And so that was really the impetus for me to write this grant and come up with this this particular intervention.
So I think for our audience, it might be like data. What collecting is a 3 or 4-year-old going to be doing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we try and make sure that there are books that are involved, hands-on activities, and movement. So for example, a book, the children might read The Hungry Caterpillar, which is a book where the caterpillar eats like one thing on Monday, 2 things on Tuesday, 3 things on Wednesday, until Saturday, when he eats like 20 things, gets really sick, and then only eats 1 thing on Sunday. So they read the story, they do the graph, they talk about the.
So what would the graph be? Oh, the days of the week and how much they eat?
How many things they eat Monday through Friday. So in that activity, they start with Monday through Friday, and then they talk about, well, what do you think is going to happen on Saturday? And they think, oh, most kids will say they think they're going to be 6 things. They're going to add one more thing each day because that has been the pattern so far.
Right.
And then they're surprised when they find out actually the pattern was broken, and it's great fun because the caterpillar gets sick. So they create those graphs, they have those discussions. They can create those graphs with like physical objects. We call those object graphs. We also have the children create what we call body graphs, where they stand in like a large grid as a point of the data. So for example, in animal data shuffle, each child gets an animal card. And they sort themselves first by how many legs the creature has. So either 0 legs, 2 legs, or 4 legs. And they're physically standing in the graph. They make it in the tablet app as well. And then they resort themselves by how their animal moves. So I think the movements are run, hop, slither, and there's one other I'm missing. So it's a great time for them to be physically active, but also practice sorting and then resorting, which is something that they're doing in preschool anyway.
And they're in the grid of the graph of the chart. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
So they're picking, I'm going to be a snake, or I'm going to be a turtle, or I'm going to. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So we try and make sure that it's really hands-on and active, and building on the types of things a preschooler would do anyway.
Right.
So they're already counting and classifying and sorting and comparing. So we tried to build those things in a way that would be really fun. That's why we particularly like starting an investigation with a book,
Right.
and going from there. But so that's what I mean about data, collecting things about questions that are interesting to them.
Right. Okay. Okay. Different than we might think of data with older children or adults. So.
Yes, exactly. We also tried to build in some social emotional learning. So in one of our investigations, the children have these little icons of their feelings. So they have up to 5 different feelings they could choose from. And they do a graph where they say in the morning how they're feeling, and they make a graph, and they do it in the afternoon after nap time, see how they feel again. And then there's an option to compare in the app, so they can look at the same variables at different times of the day. And
so
then
you want to show us a little of the app?
Yeah, let me project my screen. I can give you a quick walkthrough.
Okay. So, and also, is this available for free to lots of preschools around, or where are you in the whole process?
That's a really great question. The app will be available for free in probably about the next month or so. We'll release it, and I'm happy to come back and talk about it at that point. It'll be available both in the Apple Store and the Android stores, and it's available for free, or it will be.
And it's called Data Toolbox, Preschool Data Toolbox?
The Preschool Data Toolbox. We worked with WGBH, which is the PBS affiliate in Boston, and it will be released. They'll be releasing it very, very soon. As you can see, here's what you see when you open up the app. And there's a part here to get to the teacher's guide, which has background information and some videos for professional learning, as well as each of the investigations written out.
So is this appropriate for kids who are at home, or just kids in a classroom?
That's a great question. So we had the classroom in mind when we created it, but there's no reason that you couldn't do some of this at home. You might just need to adapt it. Instead of, say, doing a body graph with 15 kids, an object graph might be the right way to adapt it if it's just a single child at home, or a smaller group of children. Yeah.
So for play groups, that might be a homeschool group, or just a couple of parents bringing together a group of kids and maybe looking at all of the food that the kids brought for snack.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's so if you went into the investigations, you'll see a screen here with 6 investigations that we've already created, and some of these I've described a little bit. There's also this create your own section where you can just go in and write your own research question and create anything you want in a tally graph or a bar graph. And the second part of that is once you have a series of investigations that relate to one another, we can create what's called a data story. So you would go in and you'd pick which investigations you wanted to include. And then for each page of the narrative or the book, you would go in and write, it would probably be the adult writing this, but saying like, okay, so we chose to investigate this research question because, and fill it in, probably through discussions with the children. And then when you're done filling in all the text, it presents as like a slideshow, almost like a book.
Wow.
Yeah.
So up till now, these things I've learned take a long, long time to build. So has this been like 2 years in the making?
Yeah, we started in fall of 2019. And this is I think this is the 4th version of the app. So we have done like a research study. We take that feedback and we feed it into how we make changes to the app. And then we come up with a new version and then we test it again. And we keep going through that process until now when we're releasing it to the public.
Okay. So before, I have lots of questions on that part, but is there anything, I always have lots of questions. Is there anything on the screen that you want to show our audience? Like, can we look into the investigation?
Yeah, let me just give you a quick tour here. So you go in, and if you want to start an investigation, so here's Hungry Caterpillar, you'd start a new session. You can make many sessions. So this could be, if you want to do it in small groups, a teacher could do this 4 separate times with 4 kids at a time, for example. And then they'd go in and pick the research question that they want to focus on for that session. There's icons here to choose from. And then the teacher would pick the range. So you can do 0 to 5, 0 to 10, 0 to 20. And in our create your own section, it goes up to 100 if you want.
Wow.
In some investigations, we try and specify the choice of the range, like which you should do, and then have a discussion about range with the kids in a very simple way. And then the process of entering the data is pretty simple. You just would tap on this icon here, and there's a plus and minus. So once you're,
might be an example of, how many kids brought apples to school today, and how many kids brought bananas.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And once the data is in, then you press this green button, and these tools show up at the bottom of the screen. So there's a prompt here that helps lead a data talk question. So for example, you might want to ask the kids which group has the most, which has the least, like really preschool friendly kinds of questions.
Right.
And this is just a way to help the teacher remember what those might be.
Right. Okay. So, well, why don't you finish and then we'll come back to just the 2 of us on the screen.
Sure. Let me just show you a couple of these tools really quickly.
Yeah.
So this is the drawing tool, so you can draw directly on the screen. Then there's a sorting feature where you can sort ascending, descending, or you can drag and drop. So you can just tap it and move that column wherever, which is great if you have a lot of different variables there. And then there's a slider tool. So over here you see there's the pictograph, which here is just like a little paint slab. And the slider is all the way over here. When you move the slider to the center, these become boxes. And then if you move it all the way over, it's a bar graph. So this helps the teacher make it more and more abstract.
Interesting. Okay.
Here's these discussion prompts that I mentioned. And then at the end, you can choose 2 graphs to look at side by side.
All right. So it could be Monday, who brought what fruit? And let's see about Tuesday. Oh my goodness, everyone seemed to bring strawberries on Tuesday.
Right.
Something like that.
Yeah. Okay. So in this case, this is where they are talking about their feelings. So they're comparing 2 different graphs. This one is at the start of the day. This is at the end of the day. And it looks like slightly more children are happy. So they would talk about how many in each group and then which has more and maybe why. Getting back to that whole idea of you want children to talk about the data, not just like create the graph.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And it's nice doing data about how they're feeling.
Right. Exactly.
It's a habit to check in with yourself. How are you feeling? So
Yeah. I
Um,
should also mention this app is meant to be what we call teacher mediated, meaning the teacher's holding it and making most of these selections on the screen.
mhm.
Although over time, children become more comfortable and can do this more. But it's not the kind of thing we just hand the child and walk away.
Right.
It's not simply a game. It's meant for the teacher to be there scaffolding the process.
Sure.
Yeah,
Collecting information.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then I'll just show you, here's where you would go to create your own and
Mhm.
design your own data story.
Very cool. Very cool. So, some of my questions are: how did you select the schools, or how did you select the preschools? And how many teachers have had their fingers on this? And every time they get a new version, are they very excited to use it? And how does that all work?
That's a great question. And this was one of the projects that was very highly affected by COVID.
Mhm.
Um, Although it was not necessarily bad for us. Our first version came out right when the shutdown happened. And so instead of being able to go into classrooms, we interviewed teachers and we did a survey where the teachers could go see short videos of what we were trying to do here.
Mhm.
And so we got feedback from the teachers. We revised again. And then we had a study in the fall of 2020 and then the spring of 2022, in which we had teachers record themselves. We gave them a separate tablet to do the recording, and they would upload to a secure location so we could look at what they were doing. But we didn't actually set foot in the classroom, which was very disappointing.
Because schools wanted to limit the number of people in the schools.
Right.
Yeah.
So we had connections with a number of different schools. We reached out who would be one operating actually in person,
Right.
and would be willing to try this. Because you can understand teachers, particularly in the last 2 years, it's
Sure.
been really hectic. And so there were definitely teachers who were like, I'm interested, but not right now.
Right. Right.
So we reached out to preschool directors as well as teachers we'd worked with before.
So would you say like 10 teachers participated in this, or 100 or
Um,
50?
so we had 5 teachers in the fall of 2020.
Mhm.
And then we had, I want to say, we had about 8 teachers in the spring of 2021
Mhm.
who tried this out. They videotaped every part of the activity for us.
Right.
They talked to us at the end. They let us work with their students. We met with the students virtually and showed them a PowerPoint presentation with lots of animation so we could do our assessment questions
Right. So you
in a
have
way that
to
was,
assess your own research
yes,
or
exactly.
evaluate your research.
Right. Because we wanted to see like how children's knowledge seemed to change over time.
Right. Right.
With the caveat that like we're not expecting preschoolers to reach a certain level of anything. If anything, we're asking the question like, what can they do?
Right.
Because
Right.
there's very little research on this for young children.
Mhm.
So it's not meant to be like, oh, we need to set them to this particular standard.
Right. So in a way, you were carving the beginning of research about numeracy and statistics with 3 and 4-year-olds.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's incredibly exciting. So is this grant almost over?
Yeah, we're tying things up. We'll release the app. We have some other papers and dissemination activities happening. We're hoping to apply for another grant that would allow us to do a larger study. Yeah, but I hope that we can continue learning about this topic.
Yeah. Yeah. So if people wanted to learn more about it, where would they go?
When the app is released, we can notify people. I can
Okay.
come back if you want. If you
Yeah.
want to include, I have like a link that people could sign up if they want
Sure.
an email from me.
Yep, that'd be good.
Let me
Can you?
just.
I can't remember in this particular app. Can you go to the chat, or do you need to tell me and I'll put it in?
Hold on. I'm not sure where the link is.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Where's it says private chat?
does it say over on the right of your screen? You know what? Send it to me in the private chat, and I'll put it in the public chat.
Wonderful.
Okay. And my next question is, I forgot my next. Oh, okay. How many like, are you the chief investigator on this, the principal investigator?
Yes, myself and my colleague, Jessica Young, are the PIs on the project. And
So
then
for those of you who don't know, PI, it stands for principal investigator, but I have learned that when I go to schools, I can't say it that way, because if I'm sitting with the principal, because they get very nervous. What do you mean you're investigating? It's a funny term, but yes. So the person in charge of the grant basically is you
Right.
and Jessica then.
Exactly. And then we have this collaboration with WGBH, who actually made the app and will release it.
Ah, okay. So we can also, interesting. Okay. So what makes a company like a WGBH want to be involved in something like this?
Oh, that's a great question. You should have one of my colleagues on to answer that question.
Sure.
They make a lot of digital media in addition to their television media.
Uh-huh. Okay.
So this fits in really well with things that they've already done.
I see. Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, hello, Cassandra. It's great to have you join us. And I think I might be out of questions. My last question is, in the time of COVID, you're involved in lots of evaluations and a lot of research. Have you, as a company, and as you're working in the company, have you come up with, like various things that actually are better to do, or that you've been forced to do, and in the long run, it's like, wow, well, that actually is a big improvement from? Has that happened with anything for you?
So one thing that I used to really prefer to go in the classroom to get a sense of what was really happening in the classroom.
Right.
And I still do prefer that.
Right.
However, since we've been able to have all these videos, it's so great to be able to go back as a researcher and look at the videos again to make sure you're not missing some nuance or some aspect that, like, in the moment you would have kind of missed.
Right.
Yep. So in the detailed sense, I appreciate that. On another project, we just tested an app using a GoPro camera that we had the children wear like a headband. And because the app is augmented reality, we wanted to be able to see not only what they did on the screen, but what they were doing around themselves.
Right.
And it maintains that child's anonymity because we on the video don't see the child's face.
Yep.
So that I'm really excited about that kind of innovative way to collect data. So I would probably want to do that. Even if I was in person, I might use that GoPro camera to be able to go back later and see how the child was doing. Sure. Yeah.
Sure. That's an interesting way to do it. So hopefully in the next couple of months, as things open up, you'll have the opportunity to. So what you would do is you would wear the GoPro camera while the teacher's teaching. Is that what you're thinking?
Well, the way that we did it on that project is the child wore it. It's on like a little headband. And the children really seemed to like it. And it was pretty easy for the teacher to sort of like just press the button and let them do their thing.
Cool. Yeah. Cool. Well, I want to thank you for coming on. Sure. I love doing my heart-to-heart, so I get to learn a lot because I'm a super curious person. And Ashley and I have worked together on another project which was called Green Fab, a National Science Foundation grant to improve the engagement of high school kids in the South Bronx. And it's always great to talk to you, and we will have you back in a couple months. I want to learn more once it's live. And so
happy to.
Thank you. For those of you who haven't been with us before, RoboFun is a company that helps kids do creative things with technology. We are at 102nd and Broadway, and we have lots and lots of programs if you go to robofun.org. And coming up next week, I believe it's next Tuesday, is Lunar New Year. We have a vacation day. Kids can come in for half the day, the full day, ages 3 to 13, not full day for the preschoolers. And we have coding, robotics, Minecraft, and some animation workshops for kids. So thank you so much. And I'll see you next week. Thanks again.